It's going again. The brand or name recognition is if it's a little church trying to get going and you say, yeah, this is our church. We've got, 12 people or members or 20 or whatever. It sounds a lot better if you say, yes, we're with Messiah Lutheran Church, or whatever our name's going to be. That's under discussion. Got that figured out yet, Jacob? You're supposed to be figuring that out yet. And they say our main campus is over off of Ridge Road over in Northwest Wichita. To maybe someone that's not connected to a church, maybe that makes some sense, and maybe it sounds like, okay, this isn't a fly-by-night group that I get involved with this, and they could bail, and then I'm just out there. No, that it's having a second sight in our society today and in the Christian landscape kind of lends this idea of, okay, they're more established and it's not like they could be gone tomorrow. So that's a little bit more on that. So, and probably best, I'm going to work through this. You guys jot down things if you got questions, and we'll get to them. Maybe just simpler to go through it here once. So the next thing that comes up is, why are we talking about East? And we've included all the way up Park City and Valley Center, just to try to increase the number of people that could maybe be involved in a core group. Why go into the east or northeast part of Wichita? And some of the original thoughts, we've gone back and forth as a committee, just so you know, that we were looking east. Then all of a sudden we had the brainstorm to go west and to go into Goddard. And then guess what? We kind of got blown back the other way. And here's some of the thought process that goes into why are we looking on the east side or maybe to the northeast a little bit. Nope, let me get my, there we go. The core group potential, as far as how many different families or people could serve in that area. We kind of made, Mark was in his graphics, he kind of put all the member addresses in, and then he showed little bubbles with a radius, I believe, of 3 miles in the different parts of areas around Wichita. And if you take the east part of Wichita, you take the Bel Air area, and then you take even up around the Valley Center, Park City area, you could have 30 potential members of our congregation that fall into those bubbles, those 3 main bubbles. And so you would have a potential for a core group just by, again, going by residency and not by any verbal commitments. We figured, I think that might be somewhat conservatively, could be as high as 15, but 10 to 12 family units to making up those 30 plus members that you would say, all right, here's some families that are involved there. And then there's more opportunities. This was kind of a big one when we started looking at Goddard being a little bit spread out. If we're going to try to make an impact in the community and try to lend some credibility to what we're doing, we want to be involved in the community. And just because of the population and the density of people, there are more opportunities for community service if we're going to look to the east than going to the west. So some of I didn't put this down, maybe even geographical. If you think, well, we've already got a church on the northwest side of Wichita, why would we go further west? And not that that would have prohibited us from doing it. It just was that we thought, well, maybe it's a little more logical looking to the east. And the growth potential, as far as estimates, that Mark did a fine job of this, of showing where the Wichita City is growing, or Goddard or Valley Center, any of that. It's at least equal to or greater than some of the other areas. Much of the growth naturally we see in Goddard and Mays, but projected growth along the east side isn't way behind, if it's behind much at all. And so that was something that certainly didn't prove to be detrimental for us to say, well, we better not look in that direction because they're not growing over there. So just more people. So you're going to have, as far as numbers of households growing because of it. So, and lots of data we have on that as well. I'll give you a little bit of the timeline as we go on. So you'll find out this isn't something that's going to be considered overnight. And this is rather broad as well. Having worked on the mission board, I know how timelines work. They're a good barometer or a tool to have, something to follow, but we have to be flexible with them. The very first thing we were asked to do was to have a demographic study of the areas that were completed. Or I mean, of the areas that's been completed. That's again, thanks to Mark Quinnett and the work did. And the committee, he's had some wonderful presentations of very in-depth information. So even to the point that our mission counselor, Matt Vogt, was very commendable about, boy, he says, you've exhausted the area. Have you looked at everything of church growth, of the population, of where it's going, the school districts, everything was studied in there. So that kind of let us jumping around a little bit, but then gave us the, I guess, somewhat of the finality of saying, let's go on to the east side. So that part is pretty much wrapped up. Now, here's some of the things that are a little bit more broad, and this is what we're in the process of right now, that actually trying to get a jump on it, identifying and developing what we call a core group. And we're going to talk about what's expected of members who commit to such a core group. But it used to be in former days, you would maybe call a pastor, put him into an area that you thought was great for growth. You can call it an exploratory mission. And it was up to that pastor, that missionary, then to knock on doors. And you didn't necessarily always have a core group of WELS members if you had any at all. And thankfully, the Lord did bless some of those opportunities. But we also now have said it's so much more beneficial to have a core group of WELS members to begin any kind of a new endeavor. The most recent one in our circuit is in Joplin, Missouri, where a core group of members from Faith in Pittsburgh, who probably lived in Joplin or closer to it, said, we think that we can form a group to start a church. And so we kind of have, even though it was in a totally different city, we kind of have a model of what was done in Joplin as to how we might proceed. And they did this, they've gone through the same sort of process, just in a totally different city. So we're looking at anywhere from 3 months or so to get this finalized and say, here are the people that have expressed a willingness to be in this core group. One thing they've done differently on the mission board, they ask for some somewhat extensive biographies of the people so we know what their gifts and talents are. And so that would be one of the next steps that would follow down the road once we identify those that are going to be interested. From July to September then of this year, establish small groups. So you have Bible studies in homes or wherever you can with the members of the core group. And then you start looking at ways you can reach out into your community. So to organize these a little bit more, small groups, community outreach opportunities. Notice this, actual worship services don't start right away. This was another thing that's changed over the years. It used to be, hey, Mr. Exploratory Pastor, get there and put a sign up that you're going to start services. Services now are something that come much later, could be up to a year. And I almost said a year plus there because sometimes it may be over a year. And that's once the second, if we're going to call this second site, second pastor, I'd be, first pastor, but once a second pastor of the Messiah campus would arrive. So it isn't that services start right away. It isn't that core group members would not be attending worship at Messiah during the next couple of years. Is probably going to be what happens, but we still are going to have Bible groups, Bible study groups that are meeting and have that core group take involvement in the community. And Mark, I kind of put this here. I know it's been thrown around a little bit, but then it may come earlier, it may come a little later, but try to find a ministry center. Is there something that would work as maybe not so much a place for worship right away, but something that might be beneficial to use for some of these gatherings? There's a sense of permanency if you have a place other than people's homes. It is important to develop those relationships with people. Groups in the homes are fine. But as that group begins to grow and you want to bring that entire group together for maybe some larger studies or activities, it's good to have a ministry center. So I have it down coming up later is to hopefully finalize one. But then you have from October of this year into the spring of 2022, and I just kind of categorized it by working the field. Now you've got a core group of people that have been identified that said we'll commit to helping out in this area, and you've got an area that you've kind of defined a little bit. So you're looking at a ministry center. So this would involve continuing to consult and meet with the district mission board and the mission counselor, Matt Vogt. They're really the resources that we have. They've done this before. They're the ones that are going to kind of keep us hopping a little bit. And we're sharing everything back and forth with them as we proceed now as well. So there you've got about 6-7 months of finalizing some things that would involve keeping these core group meetings together, whether that's Bible classes or activities or outreach, whatever it may be. So you don't lose track. You don't lose track of where these members are. You'd want to secure a ministry center location. Our committee, Mark and the committee, we've said that some of this would change possibly if you get a missionary on board, a second pastor that would maybe say, well, I thought something better might work. So this is where we look at saying, well, let's see what we can possibly find, maybe get something that would be utilized. And prepare a budget. Sounds like a big thing. Here's the thing that there's plenty, the mission boards have done these plenty of times. There is money available to help us out. It's not like we would say this is going to impact our budget tremendously, because most new starts are given the okay up at the Board for Home Missions in Milwaukee. And then they're saying, here's what, when we say prepare a budget, it's pretty much telling the mission board up north, this is what we need. And then they would, yes or no, if they think it's viable, they think we've done our homework, they could give us a 3 to 5 year, here's how much grant money you're going to get, which would cover the vast extent of this new endeavor. So this isn't meant to be a cash, just drawing cash from us as a congregation and being something to put us in a hole financially. So it wouldn't really work that way, and we wouldn't have to worry about that. But we'd have to sit down and say, all right, what are we going to need? How much is it to rent this ministry center? How much do we need for materials, outreach, and things like that? So, and then if everything would fall right in place by May, we would be able to submit a request for a second pastor with the approval of the Board for Home Missions. That would either be a graduate, and again, that decision would probably have to be before May, because we'd have to get our application in and make sure that it's brought to the seminary. Doesn't guarantee we would get one, but at least request one. And the option would be also to call from the field, that we would call an experienced pastor to come in. But, it's kind of a target date there has been May of 2022. If everything flows the way it should, sometimes it does, doesn't always necessarily do that. So I'm going to keep going. Keep your questions if you would, but here is the one part, the attributes and expectations of the core group. Probably what some of you are wondering, well, what would you want out of me? What would I have to do? Let's kind of look at that. Mission mindedness. We want people that kind of get it, to say, yeah, this isn't just come to church and have everything laid out and then you leave. No, you're kind of saying this is a new group, a new mission. Kingdom mindedness is another term that we've thrown around, that you're looking at the bigger picture and saying, this, if this is a way to reach more people, great. I'll look into doing something like this. What that involves, if we're going to start up some of these small groups, and if we only have a core group of 10 to 15 family units, we want everyone to be participating. That would say, yes, consider me to be in on this core group. Then we'd want you to attend in the classes. And these small groups are anything under the sun, different Bible topics, and we'll work on that. We want to do that as a congregation anyway, but this would be some that would be set up with the intent that people would bring their friends along and say, hey, we're looking at starting up a second site for our church over here. We're having some Bible classes. If you want to join us, we meet at this house or whatever. Participating in any outreach or community events. If we're going to do something service related, best you can, schedules permitting, that you would be a part of that. You would participate and say, yeah, you can put me down for that. Be the face of the mission. See, there's not a pastor there yet, and myself and hopefully a vicar, we would be involved in it, but we're not going to be able to say, hey, we're the ones that are running everything, nor would it be expected. It's not being set up to say, okay, pastor, just carve a little bit more time out of your schedule. The idea, and it's always been understood, is that this is not something that could be done and done well, or run well with just myself doing it. It's really got to be this core group. And as I mentioned, the prospect of getting a vicar that would help out with a lot of the behind the scenes type things. But people are going to see you, and the core group is going to be the group that people are going to relate to, especially before we get a permanent pastor that would be working that site. And here's the commitment, and this first one might kind of surprise you. and I've even been a little generous on it, 24 to 36 months. And that's where you would say, I would give my time for 2 to 3 years, understanding that it usually says 36 months, because understanding that we may not have services starting for a year plus, that you would say, I will commit to attending this core group, even when they start services, for up to, the 3 years, just to say, this is what we're going to do to make sure it gets off the ground. And here's some things to remember: not necessarily permanent. That doesn't mean you couldn't come back to the main campus. Doesn't mean that you couldn't, on special services or whatever, come to the main campus. But for the most part, you would say, I'm going to be committing towards this new endeavor when services start. But until then, you would still worship over on Ridge Road. But so it's not necessarily permanent. And here's another thing: it doesn't just necessarily mean those that are living in the area, in our targeted area of East Wichita, Bel Air, Park City, Valley Center. There might be someone with mission zeal that lives within half a mile of Messiah that would say, I think I'd like to drive 20 minutes over or whatever to wherever this other spot is. I think I want to do that. And so where primarily we want to talk to the people that live in that area, we're also understanding there might be some that might want to say, I want to do that. I want to go to the Bible classes, and once they start services, I can commit to attending there for a couple of years and making sure it gets off the ground. So what next? And then I'm going to pause and let you guys ask me questions. But once we're done here, the Mission Expansion Committee is going to put together a survey to gauge interest, asking for what we're not asking tonight, asking for how committed would you be to something like this? Could we expect of you involvement in these following areas? Would you be willing to attend a worship there once it got started for up to 24 to 36 months, or total involvement? We are going to target the potential core members living in the designated areas. That's an automatic, whether people are involved here or not. They're going to get that survey that is going to be sent to them to see how much interest there is. But we're also going to make the survey available to all members who are interested, that they also could say, consider me part of that group that would be included in the biography of core members that you would present to the Synod, because I'm interested in doing something like this. So everyone will have a chance. Again, we're going to target specifically those that live in the area to give them first shot at it. Then when we get the survey completed, we're going to share the results and consult with the district mission board and with the mission counselor and say, this is what we've got. Here's who we have. Here's the biographies that we've written up about them. Here's how they've already been involved in the church. Here's what they're like with their attendance and how they serve the church. And this is what we got. You give us some advice. Is it enough to make a go of it? Are we lacking some things here? What could we possibly do better? What next? Pray for a vicar. All indications are that we are going to be receiving a vicar. They have received my application, both in the district and the Synod level. I've received confirmation from our district mission board and the administrator for the board for home missions, and told me he was going to read it over with avid interest. But they have a larger class this year. I personally would be very disappointed if we did not get a vicar. So I think we'll have one for a year, and that would be quite instrumental in helping get some things going with this second site. Vicar is not going to do all the work over there, nor is he going to say, okay, good, the vicar, you go handle that, and Pastor Rockoff will handle the Messiah Ridge Road site. It doesn't work that way. This is simply be part of the vicar's training. And he would have time to do a little bit of the work over there just on a weekly basis, but it is not by any means going to be, this is all the vicar is going to do. But a vicar is very helpful. We built the whole premise of doing this in the hopes of having a vicar, because we quite naturally said the manpower without a vicar just wouldn't be enough. I'm getting too old. I don't know if I have that much energy to add this on. So kind of changed the game a little bit on us and said that if you really want a vicar, we'd like to make sure you're trying to attempt to do something on the east side, which in my report was highlighted, that we are aggressively following the timeline set up by the mission counselor and the district mission board in pursuing to the endeavor of looking into a second site. pray about your possible involvement in this exciting endeavor. Yeah, it's you say, wow, that takes something to be separated from my church a little bit, or to be kind of thrown out of my comfort zone, out of the norm a little bit. So pray about it. Is it something that I'd like to do? Is it something that, hey, might even jumpstart me spiritually a little bit, to be in a group of very close people and starting something new, to see what exciting opportunities might come as a result of it. Questions or comments? That's about as much information, and I apologize if it wasn't more extensive, and there could be lots of questions here, because as a mission expansion group, we've talked a lot about it too, and there's pros and cons. I've given you mostly the pros, but there are some cons that if you have questions about, or you want to bring up, I'd be more than happy to address those as well, or be honest with you if we have concerns along the same area. So who has anything? And probably, I don't know, there's raising your hand buttons or something if you don't all talk at once. I don't know how that all works, but if you want to even wave at the screen, or you find the raise hand button or the clap emoji, I'll recognize you, and that way we can have some discussion. So the floor is open for anyone that has anything. And it couldn't have covered all the details, so I know there are some.
I'm curious when the actual survey might go out.
The survey, we're hoping that we get that. Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that we're probably going to meet as a committee sometime this month. I would hope before the end of the month that we would have, I don't want it to be too extensive, but I do want at least to give us a clue of who's indicated interest and who we can count on. As far as any kind of commitment stage, that's probably the next, or commitment phase, that's probably the next stage of it, to say, who would say, hey, I'm in. If and when we get something going, you can count on me. And I'd like to put down some of the areas for attending groups or Bible classes, for helping with outreach events, for whatever we can maybe fine tune a little bit. But I don't want it to be a 2 or 3 page survey. I want it to be something that says, all right, you're getting my permission to come and talk to me, or to set my biography up, or to submit my name as part of the core group that's given their consent to be in on this. Do you think that's right, Mark? You think that's what we're looking for? I'm sorry?
Yeah, I just want to talk. Yes, I do. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you good.
I just want to, in terms of the biography, that's something that we can develop, and it's going to be developing right over the next 3 years as people getting involved in the outreach aspects of it. They're going to be able to build that biography. So I don't think anybody really needs to have a fulfilled biography at this time. It's when we actually go to the Synod missions, and for the final evaluation as to whether they're going to fund us or not, that biography is going to be more important.
Yeah, this is something new that they never used to do before, because on the other missions that I was in on that opened and we requested for, they would say, how many core members you got? And that would be about it. And now they're saying, okay, give us an idea about, are they active members? Do they serve on evangelism council? Do they serve within the church? Are they teachers? What are their background? They're just looking for a little bit more of a head start as to what are some of the talents that might be used. What Mark says too, by the time you get to rather opening thing, and this, by then your biography or your gift of, or your list of gifts and talents will probably expand on what you've done in the group. But it is something new, and they're going to guide us through that a little bit. So they probably have forms to ask us, and I've seen some of the information that they request. They're just saying to get a better grip on that, because we won't necessarily be the only, if we do get to the point of submitting this in for approval, we wouldn't be the only one that would be coming in. And what happens then, they have to decide, all right, where maybe is the money best spent? We don't have enough money to go around. So we could submit a request, and they could say, well, it's deferred. There's two things. Deferred means try again. We just didn't have enough money. And then at times there's a denial where they say, no, we just don't think you should pursue it anymore. I'd find that difficult to think that would happen, because this is something generated from the mission board. They approached me about it, And it's not something that we said, we'd like to try something and we need your help. No, they're the ones kind of behind us. They'd love to see this go. I've heard, I know they're close to starting something in Lincoln, but up in Nebraska, another church or mission site up there. But I've been told that on the mission board agenda, we're like number 2 on their, what we want to do next, which is a compliment for us. They've seen our church and they've seen, our support financially and just what we've done. And basically the question was, why haven't we started something? I said, I don't know. Good question. We probably should. So hopefully before the end of the month, we don't want to put it off too much. That after this meeting, I was hoping to, maybe on Sunday or something, Mark, we could talk about when's a good night for us to meet and come and use some of the materials they've given us, but just look at what we can put together as a survey. Because that's maybe the next somewhat definitive step in this, to say, how many people do we have looking at this that are interested in doing it? And wow, if we kind of, and I'm gonna send this out with a little bit more of an explanation for people to watch and say, so that they understand too. If you're interested, we need you to fill a survey out and let us know. If we get like 4 or 5 people that are interested, wow, I don't know, maybe then we'd have to circle the wagons and say, are we going to do this, or we got to approach it a different way? So good. Other questions? Can I play devil's advocate and throw one out that none of you have asked? Maybe you don't want to ask it. I don't know if I want to be cut off from Messiah. I think that would be hard for me not to be going to church and being a part of church life over on Ridge Road. Any of you think that? It's logical if you do. And it's understood if you think that way too. And it's been asked by our committee with our mission counselor. And he said, that is a thought that some will say, wow, that might be kind of hard. And when you say that, one of the part of the survey would be, would you be willing to make a 2 to 3 year commitment to this endeavor if it were to begin? And that could be a deal breaker too. So yeah, that's where we looked at mission mindedness to say, yeah, I know it doesn't mean I'm never going to show up at Messiah again, but the bulk of your activity, especially when worship services start, would be attending this new mission in a storefront, in a school. It doesn't necessarily mean we'd have a church bought and up and built and walk right into it. It'd be different. You wouldn't just show up on Sunday morning at 10 o'clock or 10:01, but no, you'd probably come at 9 o'clock to help set it up and pull the chairs out, and then you have to put it away. And people that are in churches that finally get their own building will talk about those days and not necessarily lament those days, but remember them and say, that's really what kind of pulled us together. We knew we were the church. If there's ever a time that you are reminded that you are the church, it's when you have a small group that is making up the church and has to work together. That if some of you are missing, it's noticeable, and you better tell someone, because you are the church. And there are blessings to that from just being a larger church where you can kind of participate, but really don't have to be involved. So makes a difference. So that's one thing that's come up. I talked about the finances part. I really don't think that should be a concern. I think the mission board would be one that says how much money is going to be needed. They may ask us how much money is going to be put into the effort. I'd probably say we don't have a ton the way we're running our child care center and supporting Synod and things like that. I had the district mission board say that they would hopefully look at our congregational mission offering and say, you do quite a bit there already. So we understand that. But someone said too, do the offerings of the new people go right to the new endeavor? Does that wait till worship comes? Probably waits till worship comes. And so that's a consideration too. So anyone else thinking of something? Mr. McCulloch.
I got a question, Pastor. Yeah, maybe in the beginning, would this be like a every Sunday type thing, or maybe every other Sunday, or is it just?
You mean as far as worship? As far as worship?
Yeah, worship or Bible study.
Yeah, the Bible studies, I think, are probably going to accommodate people and be during the week usually. The Sunday mornings are usually not if I look at the Joplin template and what's usually done, the Bible classes are really when anyone can meet. They usually start out small in people's homes. When they get bigger and you want to have more of a group one, then you start kind of thinking, is there a place that we could maybe start renting? And then you start talking about services, but a lot of that, again, doesn't take place to have a pastor on site. Again, does not mean that we would not start services until that pastor comes. That's usually the norm. But a lot of these second site ministries are developing, and we're learning as we go. And some of them would possibly be already started up with myself and a vicar, perhaps alternating on Sundays. Not always ideal. It's good for a pastor to hear a vicar preach and be there for him. But then you might have Jacob, where it might be, we're going to do once a month actual Sunday worship to just let people, get used to it, or every other. But some of that, again, develops as the core group gets together through these meetings and working the field and finding out from people. We found that more and more people are more apt to come to a Bible class with a friend that's small than come walking into a church on a Sunday morning and saying, okay, embarrass me, make me feel like a fish out of water. And so that's why some of these, the approach here is, why were we starting worship services off and taking up a good chunk of the new pastor's time preparing sermons and worship services when he really didn't have much of a group to begin with, and people probably wouldn't have walked in or been inclined to walk in on their own. So yeah, it'd be a work in progress. And I guess that's a good thing. I didn't want to emphasize we wouldn't do services until the pastor comes, but they could start up ahead of time depending on how that group is coming together. It wouldn't, put it this way, I don't think we would be starting up worship services if the only people we had were the core group members. We would want them to have friends coming. It wouldn't benefit any of you to say, well, good, now I only got a 5-minute drive instead of a 25-minute drive, and here, I'll just go to church over here. No, this is the point, that when we get enough people that from outside the church that are interested, that'd be one of the approaches we'd look into. Anyone else? Thank you for that. Well, I appreciate you being on here tonight, and I'm going to get this recorded and sent out, and with a note to anyone else, and hopefully I didn't miss too much when my recorder went haywire, but the Mission Expansion Committee will start working on a little bit on that survey. If you people have any other comments or want to talk to me privately or send me a note, certainly do that. It's again, we're working with our mission board and our mission counselor and trying to follow their lead on a lot of it, but got a good committee that's done some work behind it and kind of finalized some things. So that's the thing to watch for. We'll make sure that you don't miss those surveys too. It won't just be one and done, throw it in your church box and don't even mention it. No, we'll put it out there quite a bit, probably be online as well for you to print and run copies. So I think it's well to think that by the end of the month, we should have something. So, all right. Can I close with a prayer, and I'll let you folks get on with the rest of your evening. Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for getting our minds thinking a little bit of some of the things that could be available to us. Let each of us pray about it as to our involvement in something like this, and bless our endeavors, whatever they may be. If it's in your will that we expand and do some of this, wonderful things. If you've got other things in store for us, all things work together for our good, as you've promised, so we can't lose. Be with us and bless us and remind us of the blessings already received and ones yet to come, all in the name of Jesus, our Savior. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time tonight. And be sure and be in touch with me if you have any questions, me and Mark or anyone that you think of. So we will talk again.